What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Stokastic Fantasy Football channel. And today we are going to be going through the top 12 fantasy quarterbacks ahead of the 2022 season. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. And you've noticed we are in the middle of a rebrand, moving from Osmo to Stokastic. Everything is the same tools, same personalities, same analysis. So make sure to check out the new site, stokastic.com today. With me to discuss these top 12 quarterbacks is Nick Lepri. Follow him on Twitter at Notorious Fantasy. Nick, what is up?
I'm doing great today, and I'm very excited to break down these quarterbacks. We did the running backs yesterday, so if you guys missed that, don't leave now. Just wait until the end of the video, then go on over there, and you will enjoy that just as much as you enjoy this. I think we're going to have a great time today, and let us know down below in the comment section who your number one quarterback is going to be, even though I think everyone's going to go with the same guy.
Definitely, for the purposes of this video, we are going to be going number 1 through number 12. We are going to be using Underdogs Fantasy ADP. So if it's a little different on your platform, we are just using Underdog here, and we'll reference them a lot throughout this show. What do you say we get started?
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Easy at the top. I think consensus, similar to the running back position. It is Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills. There's just not enough good things to say about him. The offense is going to be awesome. Josh Allen has all the opportunity in the world. This team was 6th in plays per game. They were 2nd in pass rate in neutral game scripts. That's just games with one score. Josh Allen has the awesome dual threat ability. He rushed for 763 yards last year, 6 scores in the ground. He's been right around that number every single year he's been in the NFL. They also lose their OC Brian Daboll, but fortunately they're replacing in-house with Ken Dorsey. So I'm still expecting it to be a similar offense, a lot of 4 wide receiver sets and that same up-tempo and elevated pass rate for Josh Allen. Just not enough good things to say about him. And I think deservedly, he's the consensus quarterback 1 really across the industry. What do you think about Josh Allen this year?
Yeah, just like you said, there's really nothing that you can even say bad about Josh Allen. Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best quarterback in the NFL, linked to one of the best offenses, one of the best weapons groups in the NFL. Josh Allen last year was the quarterback 1 on the season, quarterback 1 in points per game. While he isn't necessarily the best rusher in the NFL, he does have a lot of rushing upside, top 3 in carries, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns, while Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray were banged up. So maybe he finishes as just top 5 in those categories. The rushing upside means a lot in fantasy football. I think this year we see Josh Allen finish yet again at the top as the number 1 quarterback. The safety with Josh Allen is just unreal. He is just a super safe quarterback. And like I said, I expect him to be the number 1 quarterback yet again.
For sure. He's QB1 in ADP on Underdog, 30 overall, which is a little bit steep, but for everything you mentioned, I think you are getting a pretty big edge with Josh Allen. The safety is just unreal with him. The conversation to me starts once you get to quarterback 2, and our consensus rankings, we're doing the consensus between mine and yours. It is Patrick Mahomes. I think to no surprise here, Patrick Mahomes has been, I think, the best pure passer in the NFL for the last few seasons now. When you look at Mahomes, the offense is also really conducive to fantasy success. 4th in plays per game, 3rd in pass rate in neutral game scripts. With Mahomes, the question is just going to be, how is he going to look without Tyreek Hill in the offense? They replace him kind of by committee, draft Sky Moore, bring in MVS, bring in Juju, but losing Tyreek Hill is massive. And we did see the offense take a slight step back without him when he's missed time through the previous years. But overall, I think Mahomes still has a chance to be the number 1 overall quarterback in fantasy, which he's already done before. What do you think about Mahomes this year?
Yeah, when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, obviously what you brought up in Tyreek Hill is the biggest reason why some people will get nervous on Pat Mahomes, and the reason why some people rank Patrick Mahomes outside of the top 5. In my opinion, while Tyreek Hill might be the most important wide receiver in the NFL based upon what he can do for the team, obviously having a quarterback with a huge arm like Mahomes match that up with the receiver that is as fast as Tyreek Hill, that's great. But at the end of the day, while they have filled the wide receiver core with some rookies, with some, like a Juju Smith-Schuster, while none of them are going to live up to what Tyreek Hill is, they're going to use the committee approach, like you said, and all of them are going to add up to what Tyreek Hill was. So while they lost this great player, I think Pat Mahomes is going to be just fine. He does not have this crazy rushing upside, and I think it's only because he doesn't want to rush the ball because he doesn't want to get hurt. I think technically, if we played every fantasy football game in the NFL playoffs, then Patrick Mahomes' rushing stats would be significantly better than 8th in carries, 6th in rushing yards, and 14th in rushing touchdowns in 2022. He still has Travis Kelce, so Pat Mahomes is going to be perfectly fine, and I don't think anyone should be panicking on what is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Like you said, he may be the best pure passer in the National Football League.
Yeah, he's QB4 for me just because I don't draft based on floor. I'm trying to actually win my league. So Mahomes, I think he's very safe with that passing upside, but ultimately he just doesn't have the same ceiling as Kyler or Lamar Jackson because he doesn't run. So to me, he's at best QB4, and it's hard for me to rank him any higher just due to the lack of upside on the ground. But our QB3 in consensus is Lamar Jackson. For me, he's very high in my rankings, QB2, and that comes exclusively from the rushing upside. We've seen him be serviceable as a passer. He's actually better than a lot of people think. Overall, when you look at passing stats, last year he completed 64.5% of his passes. Average yards per attempt was right around 7 passing yards per game to 40.2. That was 13th. This team is extremely fast. They're first in plays per game, and that's been a trend in Baltimore. They've been a little more run heavy throughout Lamar's career. Last year, they did skew towards the average. They were 23rd in pass rate and neutral game scripts. With their approach to this offseason, I think they're probably going to go back towards an even run heavier approach, but still, they're running so many plays that Lamar Jackson's volume is going to be ridiculous. He's a player that has 1,000-yard upside on the ground. He was on pace for it last year before he got hurt. And that's kind of the floor for him at this point. So when you're getting 1,000 yards rushing in a full season and then what he adds in the air, I just can't rank him any lower than quarterback 2 on the list. But what do you think about Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I also love Lamar Jackson. Now, I do have him ranked slightly lower. He is right now my quarterback number 4, so a huge drop off from the consensus rankings. So last year, like you said, he only played in 12 games, but the rushing upside is what does it for Lamar Jackson. He only threw 16 passing touchdowns last year, but if you count Hollywood Brown actually catching the ball when it's right in his hands, he probably has 23 touchdowns thrown this last year, right? Because Hollywood Brown, that game against the Lions was absolutely sad if anyone had him in DFS or on their fantasy team.
I did.
What a game that was. I had him so much in DFS. Justin Tucker, though, what a great kicker. Has nothing to do with this, though. Lamar Jackson is an excellent quarterback because of everything you pointed out. He doesn't need to have this crazy arm. He doesn't need to throw 310 passing yards per game in order to be effective in fantasy football. And he only played in 12 games that he was top 2 in carries and rushing yards. He only finished 14th in touchdowns because he only scored 2 touchdowns, but that's going to change next year. I understand that they are going to be a little bit more run heavy, maybe using I don't think it's necessarily running back by committee, but with J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, whoever is healthy is going to be getting the ball there. I just expect Lamar Jackson to put up another solid year. It's just kind of confusing. His wide receiver core just isn't all that great, but he does have Mark Andrews, so he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been that great. We're talking about like Sammy Watkins previously playing for this team.
Yeah.
It's a little more uncertain now because you have Bateman expected to step into a larger role where that's previously been occupied by Marquise Brown, who's kind of been up and down through his career, to put it positively, dealt with a lot of injuries. I mean, we've never really had like Lamar with these elite receivers, and we're not going to this year. It's Andrews, and then hopefully Bateman can make strides. But let's go to our QB number 4. It is Kyler Murray. So Kyler Murray's QB3 for me. Again, that is based on rushing equity. Kyler Murray was phenomenal earlier in the season before he suffered an ankle sprain. This Arizona offense is 8th in plays per game. Their pass rate is right around league average. They were 14th in pass rate in neutral game scripts. But Kyler, you like him for the rushing equity. I think he's the only other quarterback outside of maybe some guys that will be emerging, we'll talk about later, with this 1,000-yard upside on the ground. When you look at how he played in the beginning of the season, it was night and day from that ankle sprain. He had 5 finishes in the top 5 and 8 finishes in the top 10. All those were front-loaded to the healthy games earlier in the season. Now, we do have to deal with DeAndre Hopkins' 6-game suspension. Luckily, they kind of try to bandage over that with Marquise Brown coming in the trade. When everyone's fully healthy in this offense, I think this Arizona team could be explosive. As long as Murray stays healthy, which he hasn't been able to do to this point in his career, I think he's a slam dunk top 5 QB pick this year. What do you think of Murray?
I completely agree with you. If he's healthy, he's definitely going to be a top 5 quarterback, at least last year, quarterback number 4 in points per game, quarterback 10 on the season, obviously, but it's hard to finish as a top 5 quarterback if you only play in 14 games. Like you said, the injury definitely impacted him. The splits are unreal. Early on in the season, Kyler Murray looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And then towards the end of the season, he struggled. And I'm glad that people have kind of not let the playoff bias get to them. Last year in the playoffs, he looked like he was Stevie Wonder in the pocket. He had no idea what he was doing. And then, during the regular season, he was really good. So I think in 2022, he'll be a little bit more, he'll be able to actually see. He'll play a lot better, just like he did during the regular season. And I think Kyler Murray's a super safe pick. I have him at quarterback number 5. So not much of a difference here between 4 and 5. I like Kyler Murray a ton. And I think if you could see any of these quarterbacks potentially finishing number 1, I think all 4 of these guys can that we have on the list so far. And I think number 5 will be able to as well. So all these top 5 guys I'm very excited about. There's really nothing bad you can say about Kyler Murray. Maybe that he's a little too short and can't see over the offensive line. Maybe that's a joke you can make about him, but he's still very good.
Yeah, man, that was a bad game in the playoffs. But
Yeah.
I think, like my rankings, I'm elevating the rushing equity for these players a little more, chasing the ceiling. Seems like
Makes
you're a
sense.
little higher on the pocket passers, and that extends to QB5, which is Justin Herbert, quarterback of the LA Chargers. Similar to Mahomes, there's not really too many holes to poke in this guy. He's just not going to rush as much as Kyler or Lamar. But you look at
Yeah.
him from a team perspective, Chargers were 5th in plays per game. Pass rate in neutral game scripts, they were 4th overall. Herbert was 2nd in attempts per game, 2nd in completions per game, 2nd in passing yards per game. And, he has that Mahomes rushing ability. It's just not used quite as much. 302 rushing yards, 3 scores. He's a big bodied quarterback. So around the goal line, he kind of has similarities to Josh Allen. He's not going to get as many attempts, but he is a guy that can punch in the ball from short yardage and QB sneaks in situations like that. So I love Herbert. The offense is only getting better. He plays in that highly competitive AFC West, which is going to be shootout after shootout, just looking at the components of each of those teams. You're a little higher on Herbert than me. I think it's the rushing equity for the other signal callers, but talk to me about Herbert.
Yeah, like you said, Justin Herbert was top 2 in passing attempts, top 2 in passing yards, number 3 in passing touchdowns. The rushing equity isn't as strong with him. Top 10, though, in all categories. I expect in 2022 for him to have a pretty similar season. The team is basically the same, like you said. They have Keenan Allen still, Mike Williams. They have some other ancillary wide receiver options. They still have Austin Eckler. I think Justin Herbert greatly benefits from Austin Eckler because Austin Eckler is just a great check down option. If Justin Herbert's in trouble, he just checks it down. And then Austin Eckler can really make anything happen the second you throw the ball to him. And then they kind of push Jared Cook to the side and bring in Gerald Everett. Is that even a downgrade? Is it an upgrade? I don't know. You can make like a million arguments about that. It's probably the exact same fucking thing. So at the end of the day, this is basically the exact same offense with a better offensive line. And this is a great defense. The only thing that worries me is that the LA Chargers defense is going to be so strong that Herbert potentially doesn't get to throw a lot deeper in the game because they are already winning by a million points and they're just running the ball. But the counter argument to that would be the argument that you made about how they're in this division with the Chiefs, with these other teams, the Denver Broncos, the Raiders, that are going to be very high scoring. So you can counteract that argument as well. Again, with these top 5 quarterbacks, to me, there's really no holes to be poking in them. I think Justin Herbert could easily be the number 1 quarterback just because of how much he throws the fucking ball and because of how good this offense is. So I like Justin Herbert a ton. He is my quarterback number 4. So again, nothing super different from your rankings and our consensus.
Yeah, he's QB5 for me. We're splitting hairs here. And I mean, like, when you look at betting markets, they're not favored to win their conference. So, we can project positive game script. They have a good win total, but I still don't think it's going to be like them running away with games to the point where they need to ice or they can ice Justin Herbert at the end of games. I think he'll very much be involved. To me, there's a tier break after this, and our QB6 is Jalen Hurts. Before we dive into this, I want to ask you, do you view there being a tier break when you get to QB6, just following the Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray tier?
Yes, I do think that there is a tier break, but I think by August there are going to be tons of fantasy analysts that would say that Jalen Hurts is just in the same pocket and could finish as the QB1. I also believe he could finish as the QB1. I'm just significantly more confident with all the guys in the top 5. I originally thought that Jalen Hurts was playing for a contract this year, but it appears the team's just ready to give it to him. I don't know if you saw that news on Twitter, but the team's ready to give Jalen Hurts some serious cash.
I find that hard to believe, but again, I guess money talks, and we'll see what they end up doing. I asked this because Jalen Hurts is 63.5 in ADP on underdog, and Kyler Murray 61.6. So we have two
Yeah.
places separating these guys on underdog fantasy. I would much rather have Kyler Murray than Jalen Hurts just because of the rushing equity. I think the offense is better overall, and he's just a little safer. With Hurts, like apparently there is job security now. He's never really been a player that's had a ton of job security. They're kind of throwing the house at skill position players around Jalen Hurts to see what they actually have. Again, he's not a first round pick, so they can move on from him pretty easily in the coming years. And they have a lot of first round draft capital to potentially make a move on a future signal caller. So I'm not sure they're quite ready to give him the money without having seen that elite ability. But overall, we like Hurts because of the rushing equity first and foremost. But now he's surrounded by multiple first round picks at pass catcher. You bring in Devontae Smith. They trade for A.J. Brown. Dallas Goedert's still there. And they have a strong rushing attack. Everything is in place for a really efficient offense if Hurts can orchestrate it. And to me, the biggest question at this point is still talent. For fantasy, the rushing overrides that a little bit, and that's why he's still QB6 for me. What do you think of Hurts?
Yeah, it's really all about the rushing upside. They bring in AJ Brown, so that can only help. But how much can it help when your team is probably not going to be passing all that much, right? They're not going to go from one of the least pass happy teams to one of the top 10 most pass heavy teams. In my opinion, it's all about the rushing upside. He was number one in all categories, and I think that could easily change if Lamar has a full season, if Kyler has a full season. I digress, though. He was still impressive. 140 carries, 782 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. Could he put up those numbers again? Yes, he definitely could. He was quarterback 6 in points per game, tied with the State Farm band, Aaron Rodgers. I just think Jalen Hurts he's very safe as well. The only thing that sets him apart from a guy like Kyler or a guy like Lamar Jackson is we've seen Kyler and Lamar Jackson be effective passers, maybe not as much with Lamar, but we've seen him do it. Jalen Hurts has been kind of iffy. But if A.J. Brown is really this top 12 wide receiver, everyone and their mother makes him out to be, then Jalen Hurts would have to get that slight bump. So I guess you could kind of consider him in the same tier as the other guys. But for me, again, he's still definitely outside of the top 5. And I am shocked that he goes that close to Kyler right now in June.
Yeah, I don't think that should be the case, but ultimately that is the world we live in. They are drafting for the upside with Jalen Hurts. Before we move on, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. We've already mentioned them plenty times in this show, and that is because they're the best place to play fantasy football in the summer. They just unveiled Best Ball Mania 3, which is a massive tournament that has $10 million in total prize money. All you have to do is draft your team, and that's it. There's no in-season management. There's no trades. There's no waiver wire. Underdog simply gives you your best score each week of the season, and then the top score wins at the end of the year. Last year's Best Ball Mania championship team was drafted in June, so there is no time to wait. Better yet, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100 when you use the promo code AWESEMO. That is good for 4 entries into Best Ball Mania 3. All you have to do is head to UnderdogFantasy.com, go to the App Store, or even just click the link in the description to this video. Use the promo code AWESEMO, and then take advantage of those 100 free dollars. All right. So we talked about the top 6 quarterbacks. Depending on what order you want to put them in, I don't think it matters a ton. There is a pretty good consensus for these top 6. Things get really interesting once we get to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And our number 7 QB is Tom Brady, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think this makes a lot of sense. The concerns with him have kind of been the same for the last few years. The age cliff is coming. I mean, I don't know what year it's going to come. The guy's an absolute freak in terms of what he's been able to do this late in his career. And you look at the offense overall with Brady, 3rd in plays per game, 1st in pass rate in neutral game scripts. The weapons are there. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, when he returns from injury, kind of got some negative news there that he may start the year on PUP. There's a difference this year. It's only 4 games missed compared to 6. They also bring in Russell Gage for the big bucks. You still have Cameron Brate. I mean, maybe they'll get Gronk back too. But overall, there's a lot to like about Brady. What do you make of him? It's really hard for me to rank him lower than this.
Yeah, like you said, really the only worry with Tom Brady is that eventually it just has to happen, right? Eventually he's going to have to fall off. This guy's first game started, he rode in one of those stone cars that they ride in the Flintstones. So he's been playing for a while. How old is he now? 43 years old, 44 years old?
And he turns 44 in the year.
44. I mean, eventually something's going to happen. Eventually he's going to fall off, but I'm not one of those guys on TV, right? I'm on YouTube. I'm not Stephen A. Smith going to tell you that Tom Brady's going to fall off for the last 7 seasons, right? It
No,
just
your
doesn't seem like
analysis
it's
is
going to happen.
better.
Yeah, slightly better. All right, quarterback 3 on the season last year, quarterback 3 in points per game. I haven't ranked one player back at quarterback number 8, but it's really splitting hairs here. I think Tom Brady could be a top 5 quarterback, and that's crazy because of how much we've talked in this video about how much the carries matter, right? Tom Brady last year, 28 carries, 81 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. I think he's only slightly above 1,000 yards, and this guy's been playing for 20 years in the NFL, basically. He's been playing my whole life in the NFL. So I really think this year Tom Brady is safe yet again. There are some concerns with Chris Godwin, but they have Russell Gage. Gronk's probably just going to show up randomly halfway through the season. So old man Tom will be just fine. While there is definitely some debate on where to put Tom Brady, I don't think it's a super complicated argument as to why you want to like Tom Brady. It's because the guy's just that fucking good. So that's really all I got on Tom.
Yeah, he's still QB7 for me. There are a couple players I've considered moving up, but ultimately, when you look at the pass rate for this team, the floor is so good. And that's
Yeah.
really what separates him when you compare him to a guy like Joe Burrow. I mean, Cincinnati's just flat out not going to pass anywhere near as much. Their plays per game significantly worse. So to me, the floor is just so much better with a Tom Brady comparatively, which brings us to our QB8. It is Joe Burrow. There is a difference on Underdog Fantasy. Burrow is QB7. Tom Brady is QB9. There's about 10 places in ADP separating them. The most interesting thing with Burrow is he doesn't run. He's in an offense which is fairly slow, 24th in plays per game. Their pass rate in neutral game skips was decent. It was 9th, and it did get better towards the end of the year when Burrow was able to get some confidence. But still, I mean, you're talking about a significant difference in opportunity here between Brady and Burrow. The floor is just so much better with Brady on a week-to-week basis. And then you look at Burrow, his ADP is 70. That's 7 picks behind Jalen Hurts at QB6. Like, there is no question in my mind. I am taking Jalen Hurts over Joe Burrow 100 days, like every single day possible. And then like Kyler Murray, he's not even 10 picks ahead of Joe Burrow in terms of ADP either. Kyler Murray at 61.6, Burrow at 70. This is just crazy to me. Joe Burrow is my least owned quarterback among this group, and I don't see that changing. He is being drafted at an egregious clip right now.
Yeah, I have him ranked higher than you as my quarterback number 7, and I
But
completely
why?
agree
Like, what is the
with every.
difference between him and Brady? And like Brady is better volume.
No, I just think that Joe Burrow's spike games are going to be significantly better than what Tom Brady could potentially do. And again, I do completely agree with what you're saying, though. His ADP makes no sense on Underdog. I don't think I have much Joe Burrow. I really think I only have him a couple of times. I have a lot more Tom Brady because he goes later, and they're basically the same. You can make the argument that Tom Brady's better than Joe Burrow, which you've been doing this whole time. Joe Burrow now has a better offensive line, which I think is going to help him out a ton. Last year, the offensive line was a turnstile. It was absolutely terrible. I understand he doesn't have the craziest rushing upside, but when Joe Burrow pops off with the weapons he has, he, in my opinion, has better weapons than Tom Brady. I think Joe Burrow has slightly more upside. He didn't play as well last year, but that was only his second year in the NFL coming off of an injury. Now it's his third year. I think he's going to step up and play well again. I doubt the Bengals make the Super Bowl, but that doesn't matter at all for fantasy football. He did have a 6.5% passing touchdown rate, which probably will go down right around that 5 number, in my opinion, is where most quarterbacks will sit. I think he's going to be just fine, though. I just fucking hate his ADP, like you said. It makes no sense. Why is he going this high? Like, he's not that much better than Tom Brady. It's very weird.
Now he's going to regress for sure. The touchdown rate's going to come down. Average yards per attempt 9.0. I mean, like historically, the best signal callers in the NFL, like Aaron Rodgers, are sitting at like 7.8 to 8.0, somewhere in that range is elite. So 9.0 is going to come down drastically. Completion percentage 70.4%. There are quarterbacks that sustain that, but they're usually these checkdown artists like Drew Brees and Kirk Cousins that are throwing the ball with a really low ADOT. I don't think Burrow's going to be in that group. So to me, I think both those regress. The offense is now playing a first place schedule, which was an issue. And in terms of spike weeks, I mean, in order for him to surpass Tom Brady, I think Burrow needs to take a step forward, which again, we're expecting regression. So that's a little difficult to project. And Brady needs to take a step back. That could happen. It's just not something I want to predict. When you look at top 5 finishes, Burrow had 5. Top 5 finishes, Burrow had 3. Brady had 8. Top 10 finishes, Burrow had 6. Brady had 10. Again, that's last year. We're trying to project forward, not look in the past. But ultimately, I think these players are very close. And to me, the edge goes to Brady, albeit slightly. Moving to our QB9, it is Trey Lance, and he's a very interesting player to talk about right now with the Jimmy Garoppolo situation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you and I personally believe it's going to be Lance for all 16 games. That's kind of a big key in our ranking here.
Yeah, 100%. I think that maybe Jimmy Garoppolo won't be gone. It's June. Maybe he won't be gone in July. But I think by the time it's week one, it will be very clear that Trey Lance is going to be the guy. And even right now in June, to me, it seems pretty clear that he's going to be the guy.
Yeah, so we're operating under this assumption, and it may happen, it may not. You and I were both wrong about Gronk so far this year, still holding out hope, but we've been wrong before, so just take that with a grain of salt. Overall, looking at Lance, he's ranked this high because of the rushing equity, and I think I would have him above Tom Brady if I knew he was going to start every single game. He basically is giving you the same rushing equity as a Jalen Hurts, and then he's playing in a Kyle Shanahan offense with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk in the stable of backs they have. So really hard for me to rank any lower, even if he is a questionable talent. And believe me, the talent is a major question for me. He's coming out of an FCS school that barely threw the ball whatsoever, and he didn't play his final season year in college. So personally, if I was the 49ers, I would not have traded up for him, and I would continue to use Jimmy Garoppolo. But ultimately, that's not the world we live in. And if Trey Lance starts every single game, the rushing equity is going to be too much to pass up. Right now, on Underdog, he's QB 11. That's rising, ADP 87.7. You recently could have got him outside the top 100. Still too low. I think he should be above Tom Brady and Joe Burrow as the QB 7 if he's going to play every single game. What do you think about Lance?
Yeah, he's basically just the unknown Jalen Hurts, right? We know Jalen Hurts isn't this prolific passer, but we know Jalen Hurts is on an offense that will try to run the ball at a decent clip. The 49ers, the exact same way. They're going to try to run the ball a lot. They have some wide receivers. Deebo Samuel is excellent, obviously. But then outside of that, there's kind of unknowns, Brandon Ayuk and the other wide receivers that are there. And then they have the great tight end, George Kittle, kind of like how Jalen Hurts is A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has Dallas Goedert. And then Devontae Smith is a little bit unknown. He didn't have the greatest of rookie years. I think he'll be just fine. But again, I think you can compare these two players and the teams they are on. Trey Lance is going to be just fine. We need to make sure that he plays 17 games, that he is the quarterback, so that we can be fully confident in moving him up in the rankings. But right now, I think his ADP is way too low. His ADP is going to jump up immensely because people love these young rookie or the not rookie quarterbacks. It's the second year, but these young quarterbacks that have a lot unknown about them that have significant rushing upside. So he's going to skyrocket up the board. So if you're doing underdog drafts, again, promo code AWESEMO, $100 first match deposit bonus, you should be drafting Trey Lance right now before the whole herd hops on board with him.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, we saw him briefly last year. He was bad when he was on the field. The only game he was even remotely competent was against Houston. When in the full-time start he had against Arizona, he completed 51% of his passes for 6.5 yards per attempt. That's horrific. But the rushing upside propels him to solid fantasy score. So for the purposes of fantasy football, we only care about the rushing in this instance. What he gives you as a passer is basically a nice bonus, a cherry on top, similar to what Hurts was early in his career. And to me, he's just way too low right now in the consensus rankings. Ours are a little bit bullish on him, but I think it is well placed there. Our QB 10 is Dak Prescott, a guy that's kind of going a little overlooked, I think, right now. I have him a little higher in the rankings compared to you, but he's still kind of in this range for me. Dallas is a very up-tempo team. They're second in plays per game. Pass rate was sixth in neutral game scripts last year. They got worse as a team, too, because their cap situation was brutal due to that Ezekiel Elliott contract they doled out. But ultimately, I think that helps Prescott. They still have Michael Gallup coming off the injury whenever he can get back. You still have CeeDee Lamb. They drafted some players as well. But Prescott overall, last year, I think, was really limited by a calf injury he sustained in week 6. That really hurt his rushing production. He was at 146 rushing yards last year, just one score. Now, Prescott's not Lamar Jackson, but he's a little closer to like a Josh Allen in terms of rushing equity than 150 yards on the ground. I think that calf strain really did hurt him in week 6, and we didn't see much after that. If we can get Prescott back to even serviceable rushing numbers with the elevated pass rate and plays per game in this offense with the weapons they have, it's pretty hard for me to rank him lower than this. And I think he is a good value right now. ADP of QB 10, ADP of 86.2 on Underdog Fantasy right now. What do you think of Prescott?
Yeah, he's definitely at least a top 10 quarterback. Last year, quarterback 8 in points per game, tied with Lamar, quarterback 7 on the season. This guy was very inconsistent last year. There was games like up against Washington, where this dude was just amazing. He was like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It looked like. Now I understand he's playing up against Washington, so even Davis Mills probably would have looked good up against Washington at that point in the season. But you get what I'm saying, right? He has these crazy games, and then he goes up against Kansas City in Week 11. You're thinking, oh wow, this is going to be a high-scoring game. This sounds great. The guy throws 216 yards for 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He had 4 fantasy points, right? So he has these great games, and then he has these snoozer games. Like Week 1 against Tampa, he torches Tampa. I understand. I'm pretty sure Tampa won that game, but he has a great game. And then Week 2 against the Chargers, and what you would describe as probably a high-scoring game environment, the guy scores 8 fucking fantasy points. So he was very inconsistent last year, but at the end of the day, a lot of that could be attributed to the injury. I personally believe that he is going to be fully healthy going into the season. I'm not a doctor, but I do believe Dak will be just fine. And I think Dak, as a top 10 quarterback, shouldn't be that crazy of something to say. So, quarterback number 10, I have him at quarterback 9. You also have him at quarterback 9. So, we both like Dak.
Never mind. We are both in line with Dak and actually a little bit ahead of ADP in terms of consensus, a little bit ahead of his underdog ranking. So I like to see that. QB 11 for us is Matthew Stafford. He had the prolific year with LA. They win the Super Bowl. A lot to like about Stafford. They were 15th in plays per game. So, not the most up-tempo team, playing with a lot of positive game script, of course. 10th in pass rate and neutral game scripts. We love to see that. They lose Odell Beckham. Maybe he'll come back, but he's at least going to be out for the first half of the year with the ACL injury. They lose Robert Woods. They bring in Allen Robinson. I think he's a solid replacement for those players. And, of course, they retain Cooper Kupp. The question with Matthew Stafford to me is, does this team go run heavier if they have the chance? Last year, they lost Cam Akers. They still should be playing from positive game script this year. And they clearly tried to run the ball. It's just a lot of times due to injury and due to inefficiency up front, they were not able to. Overall, Stafford's not going to give you anything himself on the ground, but he will give you efficiency as a passer when they are in those friendly game scripts for the pass rate. For me, that's why he's not a top 10 quarterback. But again, he's still a top 12 guy. He's like right on this fringe. And I think this is appropriate where you should be drafting him. What do you think about Stafford?
Yeah, 17 games played last year, quarterback 6, on the season, quarterback 11 in points per game. Even if they do try to go more run heavy, you already know you're probably getting a shit ton of yards baked in instantly if Cooper Kupp is able to stay healthy, right? It's not like they're just not going to throw the ball to Cooper Kupp. I think Robert Woods being gone doesn't really affect this offense at all. Obviously, he was hurt a lot last year. Odell Beckham Jr. is probably gone. Maybe he comes back. You never really know. But they replace him with Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson, who had a terrible year in Chicago. I was really high on Allen Robinson last year, and that burned out, right? He didn't play good at all, but I think he's going to be fine in LA. Even if they try to run the ball a little bit more, there's no way that I could rank Matthew Stafford outside the top 12. I have been riding Matthew Stafford since this man was in Detroit, since he broke his arm and ran in a touchdown up against the Cleveland Browns, if you remember, 12 years ago. Maybe he hasn't been in the NFL for 12 years. I just imagine it was that long ago. But Matthew Stafford is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL. Personally, I was so happy to see him win a Super Bowl. I love Matthew Stafford, and I think that he is just a very safe quarterback. Again, the rushing upside isn't the same as a Trey Lance. It's not even the same as a Dak Prescott, a Joe Burrow. Probably the same as Tom Brady, right? Because Tom Brady doesn't run the ball at all. But Matthew Stafford is still very safe, and I think his upside is probably quarterback 8, 7 on the season. So 11 is a pretty solid ranking.
Yeah, and Allen Robinson coming back from a hamstring injury that cost him 3 games last year and certainly hindered him the rest of the way with just a horrific Bears passing attack. So I think there is upside for him to return to form as well. Still a fairly young player in the grand scheme of things. Quarterback 12 for us is Russell Wilson. A lot of debate here whether this should be Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. Just 2 players moving in different directions. Aaron Rodgers has a lot of departing talent from the offense. Russell Wilson is kind of being airdropped into one that at least has invested a lot in the talent around them. We're talking Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Albert Okwuegbunam. A lot of talent around Russell Wilson, a team that is ascending out there in the AFC West, so going to be very competitive. They do have a new OC coming in, and I'm not sure what this is going to look like. It's like, the old Green Bay Packers situation where you have Nathaniel Hackett and Justin Uten trying to call plays there. We don't know what it's going to look like necessarily, but overall, I think the efficiency is going to be there. They're a team that was able to, get the most out of Aaron Rodgers. To me, Russell Wilson's a little lower on this list because his rushing equity has just dropped as he's gotten older in his career. Last year, 183 rushing yards, 2 scores. I don't really think we see that drastically increase. What Russell Wilson has to do comes through the air. Luckily, he does have the playmakers to get it done. So I think this is a fine ranking for him. What do you think the offense looks like in Denver with Russell Wilson?
Yeah, the offense is definitely going to be better than it was with Teddy Bridgewater, with Drew Lock. I kind of slightly disagree with you. I think Russell Wilson could have more rushing upside than maybe you're giving him the credit for. Obviously, it has decreased over his career, but so has the Seattle Seahawks team has been worse than what it was in the past when he was rushing the ball more. So maybe the fact that he's in Denver, maybe he's more likely to try to run the ball. Maybe he's more likely to try to score to put the team within a close range, because a lot of these games in Seattle the last couple of years have been kind of bad. Like Seattle has been pretty shit. So I think Denver this year, Russell Wilson's going to be just fine. I don't think he's going to, though, become like a top 5 rusher or anything like that. So hopefully that came off correctly. I think Russell Wilson, with the weapons he has, pretty similar to DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, right? Obviously, Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton isn't built like a behemoth of a man like DK Metcalf, but in terms of skill set, I think it's kind of comparable. So Russ is going to be just fine. They have a solid rushing attack as well in Denver with the 1-2 punch of Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. I don't love Russell Wilson this year. I have him ranked at quarterback 12, I believe. Do you have him inside your top 12, or do you have Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, he's QB 11 for me.
Okay, so yeah, we have him pretty in a similar range of quarterback 12. I think some people are going to sip the Kool-Aid on Russell Wilson and draft him significantly higher than this in your at-home leagues because people just like Russell Wilson. He's a familiar name, but for me, he's pretty close to Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, that kind of range.
Yeah, to your point on the rushing, he did have 513 rushing yards in 2020. So last year's 183. We're a bit of an anomaly in his career. He's kind of yo-yoed around between like the 500 and 200 numbers. I mean, definitely not out of the range of possibility. He will be 34 years old this year. So, I mean, he's getting a little up there in age, especially for, the athleticism part of his game, but he still definitely can't run the ball. Anything else to add on these top 12 quarterbacks?
No, not really. I just want to make sure everyone likes today's video and make sure everyone watches after this. If you have not seen the video on Twitter, Russell Wilson yelling, "Let's ride Broncos country" like 50 times. You probably haven't seen the video. It's literally hilarious. So make sure you guys watch that. And you got anything else here before we head on out of here?
I cannot think of something I would least like to do than watch Russell Wilson do hype videos. The guy makes me cringe more than any other NFL player, but
Let's
don't
ride.
care about that for fantasy. Let us know in the comment section what you think of our top 12 quarterbacks, if there's a player you missed. And then, of course, we'll be talking about all the rest of these quarterbacks later on in the season. He is Nick Lepri. You can follow him on Twitter at Notorious Fantasy on the screen in front of you. I am Matt Gajewski. You can follow me at Matt_Gajewski. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to Underdog, our sponsor, and we will see you again next time.